And we are live. Welcome to NBA Live Before Lock. Slightly different, no deeper dive on the lead in, but we've got a 4-game slate to break down before we get to 7 o'clock and lock. I am Josh Engleman. I'm joined by Eric Lindquist. We are about to have some fun. I really like this slate right now. I'm excited to break it down. It looks a little bit different than it did when I did it earlier today for the strategy show. And now we've got a little bit more news. So I've got some stands today that I'm ready to talk about. Eric, what's going on?
Not much, my friend. Good to have you. It sounds like you're having yourself a nice little weekend here as well. But I always appreciate somebody who has a nice travel setup as you bring stuff along. Because for me, it's like, well, I like doing shows anyway. I'm going to play DFS anyway. So yeah, I think this slate is really good for a 4-gamer. I generally like 5+ games in the NBA, but thank you, DraftKings. I didn't know if they were going to make it a 3-gamer and then not attach the Orlando LA game because it's 2.5 hours. Thank God they did. I'm
Yeah,
more games the merrier on short slates.
agreed. I don't think they ever go. I think 6 is the cutoff, if I remember correctly, but you never know what they're going to do. By the way, I forgot to say this. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow us both on Twitter. Yeah, but like looking at some of the different pay up options and who's getting ownership, I'm very intrigued. Oh, there's some breaking news for from ESPN that isn't the NBA. Alexander Ovechkin, broken left fibula, out 4 to 6
Oh,
weeks.
only 4 to 6 weeks with a broken fibula? That seems impossible. Did they mean to put
Yeah, but then
months?
you look at Alex Ovechkin and it's just like, yeah, that makes sense. 4 weeks for that broken leg, you'll be fine.
Oh, dude, he's a beast. The guy's been doing it forever. I mean, he's the new Yaromir Jagr at this point in time. So
Yeah.
I don't play any NHL DFS anymore. It's impossible to do with our jobs, but I love watching the guys when we can. I like the All-Star break. I join everybody else playing for that entire week. But Alex Ovechkin, yeah, it's insane how if that were Joel Embiid, how long would he be out with a broken fibula?
Forever.
4 to 6 years? Yeah, I was
Yeah.
thinking 4 to 6 years.
So the 39-year-old Ovechkin currently leads the league with 15 goals, and he is
Oh my
27
God.
away from breaking Wayne Gretzky's all-time goal scoring record. That dude, they could saw that dude's leg off, and he's coming back to break that record.
I love that guy. I mean, he is a hockey player through and through. Also made drinking at a parade like an okay thing to do on TV in front of
Yeah,
people. I think he broke the barrier. He might actually be like one of our most important sports figures when it comes to celebrating after the fact.
he does it well, that's for sure. It's
Got
exciting to see.
hammered at that parade, and it was awesome.
That's the way to do it. Are you
Yeah,
ready to break this one down?
let's do it.
Let's do it. The first game, we're going to go game by game. I know this is live before lock. There's only 4 of them. We have enough time to be able to spend it, working our way through everything here. Detroit Pistons, 2.5-point favorites in Charlotte, 220 total. And for the Pistons, it's kind of business as usual. Everybody that's normally in is in. We're slowly but surely getting closer to Asar Thompson making his return. He's been out for blood clot issues for like a year at this point or something in that neighborhood. He is doubtful for today, but we should be seeing him get back into this Pistons rotation soon enough. Not a ton of ownership here coming into Detroit. We've got like 25 to 30 across DraftKings and FanDuel for Cade. We've got Tobias Harris around 15. Ivy's 10 on DraftKings, 20 on FanDuel. Duran is around 10 on both sites. Not really getting any ownership coming into Tim Hardaway or Malik Beasley. So I think we should probably start with Cade, considering he's pulling the most ownership. How do you feel about him here? 9,700 on DraftKings, 9,300 on FanDuel, but we do have a very busy 9K range today.
Yeah, it's a busy 9K range because, well, I would say it's probably easier to get to Cade Cunningham here now than what it was maybe before. I mean, Toronto looks a lot worse. I mean, the RJ Barrett, the Scotty Barnes piece being in, I know it's a minutes limit, but they're taking on Minnesota. I know we've been worse defensively, but that game will be up next and talk about some of the stuff that's changed from this morning till now. Cade Cunningham, 9,700. It's starting to get up there for sure. You have the entire team healthy, so it's kind of price adjusted for the situation. But I think the big thing that's changed now is we're getting like 30 minutes, 32 minutes for a Jalen Duren here on a nightly basis. I guess 18 against Washington, they completely smothered them. So that doesn't really necessarily go up against it for me. I have him in currently 30% of my lineups. I'm kind of okay with that number. It's obviously a good spot on the other side with Charlotte, regardless of it being LaMelo Ball getting benched, whether it's Trey Mann out there. I mean, Cade Cunningham is out there filling up a stat sheet, averaging nearly 9 assists per game, 7.5 rebounds per game. Across the board, looking pretty darn good to me. Amongst the spend ups, I mean, everybody wants to get up to AD, but he's 11-1 now. LeBron James 10-1, triple doubling. He makes a lot of sense with the positionality, but I think Cade Cunningham at point guard, he's definitely the spend up I'm getting to the most at guard.
You and me both. He is my most exposed guy north of 9K. He's my most exposed guy north of 7,100. He's in 40% of my stuff right now. And I'm pretty stoked about it. Like, I think he looks great. We're seeing 10% more ownership coming into LaMelo on the DraftKings side. I don't think these guys look all that different. I do think LaMelo does look a little bit better, but I'm happy to get to Cade if I can get that little bit of an ownership discount if we're just comparing these 9K guys, because we have Cade at 9,700, Ant at 9,600, LaMelo at 9,500, the new and improved Franz Wagner sitting there at 9,100. That's an interesting area, especially for Anthony Edwards right now, sitting at 8% owned compared to those guys. That's a little intriguing to me, and we'll get to that in a little bit.
I have one question for you, just to kind of maybe play devil's advocate on Cade Cunningham, because I was originally getting to him like 45%. What do you think about Charlotte's pace so far to start off this season? Because they're terrible defensively to some extent, 22nd, but Grant Williams getting inserted into the lineup, that's kind of better than even getting a Mark Williams, Nick Richards, I think. Just from a defensive standpoint, can switch on some of the stuff and maybe help it out. They're 20th in pace, 98.3 possessions per 48 so far this season.
Yeah.
Are we worried about that and maybe Charlotte not being as good of a matchup as what it was once upon a time?
I don't think so, at least not on this slate. We're seeing, basically in that like low 220s total range for the first three games. The Orlando and Lakers game, that one, not only the defensive abilities for the Orlando side, but the pace of that game is actually what I have as the slowest pace game here. I have Detroit and Charlotte second. I think it's probably something we would look at like a little bit closer if on a bigger slate, but for this one, it probably doesn't matter all that much, would be my guess.
Yeah, it's the third slowest amongst four games. I mean, we've got Minnesota higher total, Utah, San Antonio higher total. I didn't know if it necessarily mattered for this slate. Didn't know if it mattered from a positionality, because I'm never somebody who's really looking at DVP. Like, it's the collective defense that I'm the most worried about every single time. Can a team attack a certain guy? I do think having Grant Williams out there defensively as opposed to a true center like Williams or Richards probably hurts Cade Cunningham, maybe ever so slightly. But I was just trying to basically look at it from the lens of like, all right, if we're not going to get to him early on here and we have some swappability, or maybe we get to more LeBron in an obviously disgusting basketball game, maybe think about doing it. But I'm pretty happy at 30%. You at 40%, I think makes some sense too. But wanted to at least ask what you thought about the pace with Charlotte.
Sure. What else are you seeing here for Detroit? We've got basically three other guys in that 10 to 15%, even four if you want to count Tim Hardaway Jr. Are you getting to anything else from Detroit? I was getting a little bit more this morning than I am right now. I wouldn't mind having some Duren. I just don't. I don't have nearly as much of Tobias Harris as I had earlier today. I've really only got like one share of Tobias and like 2 shares of Jaden Ivey. I don't have nearly as much of Detroit as I did earlier.
Yeah, I mean, Jalen Duren's starting to play a little bit more here, but we're also seeing, a $300 adjustment from last slate where he was pretty chalky, ended up playing the minutes, ended up playing pretty darn well overall. I'm kind of a Jalen Duren guy, so I'm getting to a little bit of him still, but 10% is like on the low end for what I was expecting for this slate in 20 max. Looks like in my 150 set, he'd be a little bit higher, but out of my top 20 lineups, top 50 lineups, kind of where I'm grouping it for the 15 for the $4, I really don't see myself getting to a lot of Duren here early on. Jaden Ivey's the guy that I have the second most on this team. He's shot the ball terrible to start off this season. He's got a 49.3% effective field goal percentage over the course of the last year. I mean, he's not a great shooter overall, but under all circumstances, 25.1% usage over that last year. Don't forget the main thing that's changed. You get better basketball players in Tobias Harris and Tim Hardaway Jr. in that starting unit with him. I think eventually, though, we see some of the efficiency come up playing alongside Cunningham and better basketball players. But so far, it's basically just kind of looking at his fantasy point per minute rate. He has the shooting guard eligibility. I'm happy to get him in like 15% of lineups and just move on.
We did get news while we've been talking. It's
Saw
about
that.
this game, but it's not on the Detroit side. Miles Bridges is out for today. Trey Mann is available for today. So that will change up Charlotte quite a bit. We're probably going to create a little bit of value. I don't have anything else for Detroit. Do you want to just start getting into Charlotte?
Yeah, let's go to the salon and get our hair done.
Yeah. So I was already getting a ton of Charlotte. They are a pretty heavily owned team that currently heading into this show. They were the third most owned team behind San Antonio and Utah. And now that is probably going to look a little bit different. Now, Miles Bridges was getting 25% ownership, so that was the third most of anybody on DraftKings. But we're going to find some more here. We're getting just over 30 on both sites for LaMelo. We're getting 30 to Brandon Miller on both sites. Grant Williams is a little bit more popular on DraftKings than he is on FanDuel because he's $700 cheaper. He's getting 15% ownership on DK. Miles Bridges was 25 on both sites. That's about to get redistributed. No love at all coming into Josh Green. And then 10% ownership was actually coming into Cody Martin prior to this. Little bit to Trey Mann. Obviously, nothing coming into anybody else. Let's talk about the guys that like we're going to be getting to regardless of how these Miles Bridges changes affect anything. How are you looking at LaMelo today in relationship to the rest of those 9K guys?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to necessarily do with him after the benching. I mean, I hate when a guy has like narratives going for him. It's an obviously good matchup going up against Detroit. 34% ownership. We have him optimal 41% of the time in the boom bust right now. I could see myself just absolutely jamming him on a lot of slates. And it seems like right now I'm just pretty muted on him. I have him in 30% of my lineups, like the identical number as I do for Cade Cunningham. I know you said Cade was your highest owned that you had north of 9K. So I'm curious to see where you went with LaMelo, but I don't really look at the narrative based stuff. I mean, whatever. Trey Mann had a decent enough outing. LaMelo, what we don't know what's going on behind the scenes there. It's just super weird when a guy like LaMelo gets benched in a close game because we never really see that in the NBA these days. But I don't know what to do with it here from a projection standpoint because like we have him at 49. We have him as the highest owned guy. We have him actually with positive leverage coming in. And yet I have more interest in Cade Cunningham because I think, I don't know, I just still look at Charlotte on the other side. Again, the pace is down, but I haven't projected better. I know it's flip-flop by like a point over at Stokastic here at the moment, but how are you looking at LaMelo?
So he's in 35% of my lineup. So I'm getting to right around the field. And I think that makes sense. It's not really all that hard to get to anything on the pay up side. And this matchup, I'm happy to get both of the main distributors, the two 30% usage dudes, the two like 7+ assist type guys. So I'm just getting to him and Cade basically equally at this moment. But I'm also getting to a lot more of Charlotte. I have 40% of Brandon Miller. I had 30% of Miles Bridges, 10 of Grant Williams, 25 of Cody Martin, who's point guard, small forward, 3,800, and undoubtedly looks at least a little bit better now than he did prior to that Miles Bridges news. So does anything else stand out to you from Charlotte?
Yeah, I'm assuming Cody Martin starts. I don't know. We've seen they go to Salon. It could go either way. But there's no bad fantasy performer really on this team over the course of the last calendar year. I mean, we've got Cody Martin, the low guy at 0.81 fantasy points per minute amongst the entire team. Obviously, guys like PJ Washington not there anymore. There's a lot of stuff that's kind of diluting the sample size for me, but you just kind of go to whoever starts here for sure. I just reran some stuff, kicked it off here. So hopefully I get that updated. I'm just going with Cody Martin for now, and then I'll kind of adjust from there. If Salon ends up being the guy who starts, he's obviously going to look like good information or like a good play there. We're just going to have to wait for that information, and hopefully it comes out as late as possible because this is the first game right off the bat. I would love for Charlotte's starting lineup to show up with like less than 10 minutes to go leading up to lock so that we get whomever it is and we can just kind of jam to a certain extent. Do you have a feel between those two guys specifically if it's going to be Salon or Martin?
I feel like it's going to be Salon. I don't have a good lean there, but I think
he'd be the worst from a fantasy perspective because he's just awful.
Yeah.
0.68 fantasy points per minute.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to jam him. So, like, this is more of like me hoping that 3,800 Cody Martin with point guard, small forward ends up being the dude, because then you could just play it uninhibited. And I think he's already a good play. Like you said, you were already getting to him as well, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I had 25% even before this started. Yeah, I kind of lean Salon. I think both of those guys are just going to be getting some sort of minutes bump either way. So I expect Salon to just look decent either way. 3,100 on DraftKings, small forward, power forward eligible. He started twice this year. He played 41 total minutes in those two starts. So, maybe we're taking him into that 20 to 24 range regardless, which is going to look solid, I guess. He'll look like a slightly better version of Josh Green, probably.
Yeah.
Because neither one of them are any good, like from a DFS perspective. Where do I have Salon in terms of awful players in the league? Let's find out. Oh,
that's nice.
Not as low as I was expecting. He is the he's way better.
Rookie. I mean,
85th worst player in my model.
Oh, okay. But I mean, he's a decent enough defender. That's what he's known as. He's a terrible shooter. He's super raw. If you watch him play, it's like watching a carp out of water. Just when he gets a basketball, it's like, oh, I'm so excited. I got the ball. LaMelo passed it to me. And then, I guess I have to do that with a French accent, but it doesn't matter. Salon is going to be a decent enough defender there in the league. I don't know if we get a shot established for him here. If we do, he's going to be a positive basketball player. But right now, Dunks and Threes has him right around like a -2.5 estimated plus minus for the rest of the year. It's kind of like flatlined around -2.3, so not as bad as what I was expecting to pull up. But 52% true shooting is abhorrent. He's got no usage, 14% usage. He would be the least fascinating guy to have start amongst everybody, but this is also a salary game, and you look at his salary relative to other guys, 3,100 does a lot for you, I suppose. I'd get to some, but I would definitely try to mute it if you were showing up in any kind of a prominent way.
How do you think this impacts Tre Mann?
See, that's what I'm excited about. I think him and Diabate look better. Like Diabate, I just kind of have a thing for in tournaments. He's just found minutes upside at random times. And before Mark Williams and Nick Richards, who it was announced today, they're coming back to basketball activities, but they're not necessarily going to be showing up. I mean, Taj Gibson's been sent to the shadow realm. Like he's kind of done. I don't know. It feels like for me with some of the minutes now going to Diabate, if Grant Williams absorbs 33, 35 minutes here against Detroit, so be it. But like, I think this is a spot. There's positive leverage coming in him as is, but like we have to basically spread around. How many minutes is he even averaging here on the season as I'm like pulling up everything and finishing it out? Bridges 30 on the number. So I mean, we're taking 30 minutes, and I think Tre Mann beneficiary, Cody Martin, I think is the major beneficiary of everybody, but I like Tre Mann more. I think there's ways that he just kind of sneaks into certain lineups where, maybe we see four more minutes. That would be very fascinating for a guy who can obviously go get you a bucket. From a fantasy perspective, with Miles Bridges off the floor this season, Tre Mann's a 1.07 DraftKings points per minute guy in 167 minutes. I think he looks much better. And I think Diabate's like the sneaky guy. 4K center. I don't know. I always feel like rolling the dice on him at low ownership.
Yeah, just looking through the Charlotte guys and where these minutes can go, like they really just don't play half of these dudes. Like Vasily Micic only really gets in when Tre Mann isn't around, so I don't think that he's going to be a guy that gets any minutes. Like Seth Curry, I guess, can get, like a rotation or two, but I mean, all you're doing there is just adding in a small in replacing Miles Bridges. Like you start to give a chunk of minutes to Salon, you give a couple extra minutes to Cody Martin, maybe Josh Green gets an extra minute or something in that range. You're not really doing much to Brandon Miller or Grant Williams or LaMelo, I don't think. So you kind of just have to like give a little bit more to Diabate, give some to Salon, and then it's not like I think they're going to be going to, I don't know, Jared Rhoden.
Here's the thing. I'm worried that they start Taj Gibson. Like that's what I'm really worried about. Like a 3K Taj Gibson, I don't want to think about on this slate. But with Duren on the other side, Tobias Harris up against Grant, like I could see them starting Taj Gibson. If it were Diabate, it'd be a full send. But I think that's very unlikely. They just aren't going to do that, I doubt. I think they start like I'm starting to talk myself off of the Cody Martin because it seems like that's just kind of a bench role that they like for him. Or just looking through some of the rotations, Cody Martin came in after Diabate last game against the Nets there. You had Seth Curry. I just gave him a couple of extra minutes. I had him in for like 5 minutes. I put him up to 8. I'm just trying to like trim up these minutes and give him different places. Trey Mann would be very interesting because he's the guy who can, once again, from a fantasy perspective, looks great. Diabate would be the nuts. If you got late news on Diabate, I would just jam him at 4K if he showed up. But I'm worried that it ends up being Taj Gibson in this matchup.
You could see it. He plays the first 6 minutes of the first quarter and first 6 minutes of the third quarter, and we move on. Yeah, that feels not unlikely. Yep. By the way, we got a projections ownership at 619 and an ownership update at 620. So we at least have a little bit more information. That'll continue to get like tweaked a little bit. Obviously, we're expecting to get this Charlotte starting lineup probably in the next 10 minutes. Hopefully slightly later than that, but
yeah,
people are going to get to it one way or the other. But we do have an update already in. Is there anything else you want to talk about for Charlotte right now? I guess we can talk through like what we actually made the change to. So
that's what I was going to say. LaMelo went up. LaMelo went up for us. I'm putting them side by side. We have now LaMelo pulling 60% ownership. Again, Bridges is a guy who, over the course of this season, I mean, he's still had usage. Still, it's not like he's a nothing. He's been a shell of himself relative to like what we were expecting him to be. He hasn't really had any tournament winning upside by any means. From an assist perspective, he's been sitting right around 15% usage, been right around 22, 23% the entire season. I had him in for 22.5%, just kind of straddling the difference there today. You remove him off the floor, he's a fantasy point per minute guy. There's going to be stats to go around. And it seems like, a little bit here, a little bit there. I'm curious about Diabate because we did jam him up and I just was singing his praises. He went from 1% and being a guy I had in 18% of my lineups in my top 50. And now we have him at 17.4%, 41% optimal. I think the same guy that I think, again, he's from a fantasy perspective, the nuts amongst everybody, him and Trey Mann. What do you think about the change in Diabate? We have him like north of 40% optimal in the boom bust.
That's a big number. I'm looking at it now. I went to 22 minutes on my first go. And now I'm looking, by the way, we did give, I think, let me just double check this quick. Yeah, we did give 14 minutes to Taj Gibson. So it looks like we're all seeing that in the same way. Oh, we got the lineup. Ball, Miller, Green, Grant Williams, and Musa Diabate getting the start. Oh my God.
Why couldn't this come out at 350? That is so tilting. Oh my Lord. Sorry, that was really loud.
Has he started at all this year?
First start.
Fuck.
No, for a fact. No starts.
That's not helpful.
Nope, we are fucked. This sucks.
How many minutes is he gonna play?
He's gonna be so insanely popular, and I loved him coming into this slate. I loved him, and now we're gonna have to just look at it relative to like 50-60% ownership or something against Detroit, and he could play the Taj Gibson role. Like, there's nothing that says he can't play the Taj Gibson role, but like, this is brutal.
The most minutes he's played this year, he played 3 seconds short of 30 minutes against Orlando on the 12th. He had basically 29 minutes on the dot 2 games before that. So I don't know, like 25, 26.
Yeah, he's going to show up in everything, Josh. Going to show up in everything.
I think he's going to be frequent. I do. All right, so I just bumped him to 26 right now.
Good observation, dipshit. Good job, Eric. Way to go.
I got him as a 0.95 guy in my model. I have him at 6.1x his salary, 4K center only. I'm assuming that's about to be incredibly popular.
This sucks. I wanted this news so late. The timing of the news is as important as the news itself. And the news is that Diabate, the best fantasy producer you could ask for out of the entire bunch, is the one who's starting. It's just going to be a question of how popular he is. He's a fantasy point per minute guy, and it's a good matchup. Duran on the other side is going to look better. I'm going to give like maybe 1.5 here to, I mean, Diabate is going to be the most popular play on the slate now.
He's going to be up there, that's for sure.
It's him and
I'm
LaMelo.
assuming that he's either, first, second, or third, depending on how this shakes out. I'm running some stuff right now to see. Well, we just spent the first 27 minutes of the show on the first game. 3 more to go.
Kind of important.
We'll try. Yeah, well, this was the one that was getting the news while it happened, so we had no choice. I want to hit on the super chat that we got from Price Productions. He said, locked Tyson, Giannis, and Embiid in 150 lineups last night. Didn't take first, but did 7x my FanDuel entry fees. What's the best pivot play tonight? I don't know, which is not the answer that you were probably looking for. Because Anthony Edwards on FanDuel is different because he's $900 cheaper. He probably would have been my answer if this were a DraftKings type question, but he is getting that ownership already. I mean, honestly, to me, it's probably not that he's not owned, but Cade is half the ownership of LaMelo on FanDuel. I kind of like the idea of flip-flopping them if you want to just try to shave a little bit of ownership.
I ran stuff that's completely useless before the show. I just ran our stuff on FanDuel to have a reference point. I have to just kind of let it all update. We got that update 4 minutes ago. I'm running another sim in the corner here right now. I can't speak intelligently about that. I can't speak intelligently, period. So it doesn't really help.
That's true. That's a good point. That's a good point. All right,
probably the best
2,300
point I've
people
ever
in
made.
here. It's the most accurate for sure. 200 likes. No reason we can't run that up to 300. We're not turning this one over to another live before lock show. We need all the likes that we can get so we feel better. So hit that like button. Phil Senzig with the super chat. Dry skin winter, the lotion play of the night.
The lotion goes on the skin. I mean, Diabate looks absurd. I mean, Diabate, come on, man. This is just absurd. Lotion play of the night. Who's going to put the ball in the basket? I'm hoping we get Cade Cunningham now because I have a feeling that relative to the ownership bump that we just got on LaMelo, I'm going to probably get to more Cade and a little bit less LaMelo. Not that I'm going to be trimming LaMelo to some extent, but like I might actually just get more of them. They were both straight 30%. And now it's probably going to go up on Cade, down on LaMelo from like the 60% he's at, but it'll probably end up in like that mid 40s, 50 range, just knowing kind of how I do stuff.
I got 15% of Diabate on the run that I just did now, but that might change when his player pool amount isn't 17% and it's higher than that. But right now I'm dead neutral on him. So interesting.
I'm not.
Interesting.
Yeah, he's in more than half of my stuff right now.
And then a super chat that I probably shouldn't read. Sam Van Dam says only poor people play FanDuel. So I assume that is your site of choice, Sam? You play there exclusively?
Nothing like getting a super chat, having them pay money only for you to incinerate them. That was not very nice.
Hey, to be fair, he's incinerating half of the viewership, so he's going to get it back. And then Curtis McMillan said, wouldn't you play Ball and Cade both on FanDuel? You can. They both look really good.
You can. They both look good. I had earlier a lot of LaMelo. I think LaMelo just looks better on FanDuel. What is he? 9,400 on FanDuel. Yeah, he's going to just show up in everything.
Your Minnesota Timberwolves are 7.5-point favorites in Toronto, 225 total. And we've got some news here that we need to wait out because Mike Conley is questionable. Minutes have been up lately. Dante DiVincenzo is questionable. Minutes have been down lately because of these back spasms. He has not been very good so far. Lots could possibly change here, and each site is a little different. 6% ownership to Ant on DraftKings, 37 on FanDuel, 12 to Randall on DraftKings, 35 on FanDuel, 25 to 30 for Gobert across both sites, around 10 for McDaniels, around 15 for Conley, around 15 for Naz Reid. What the hell are you doing here? Because I think like basically everybody from Minnesota looks the same.
Yeah, everybody looks the same, except for if you get Conley and DiVincenzo out, we have to have a 3K Rob Dillingham conversation where Kentucky, I mean, his acquisition, he is out there to chuck. 3K, I doubt he would end up starting. I think you'd get Nickeil Alexander-Walker starting no matter what. He's 4,100, but he'd end up very, very popular. And I think just from a tournament perspective, because that's what you're playing, I'm playing, most people out there are playing, I think you got to look at Rob Dillingham as somebody at 3K that if you see both of those pieces of news come out after lock, you want to have kind of a 3K Rob Dillingham plan because we've seen him get the minutes. Yeah, again, it's like 5, 6, 5, 6, but I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker, shooting guard, small forward, ends up being a jam type play for a lot of people. And I think
Yeah.
I would try to talk myself into some Rob Dillingham as much as humanly possible because he'd get
Mm.
some of that second unit run there with Naz Reid. He wouldn't have to deal for usage with Julius Randle. I think you take Ant off the floor, you're probably getting Rob Dillingham out there for every single one of the minutes that he isn't out there. So I'd at least put him at 12, maybe 14. And I think this is a guy that we have no sample size on, but I think he would look awesome in tournaments at 3K if it ends up being him. His fantasy point per minute rate, 0.70. Don't even look at it. It's useless. He's played 37 minutes, and anytime he showed up, it's like, hey, come out, just basically strictly shoot. He's not going to add as much, I think, in stat categories as some of the other guys that we've seen here at 3K on certain slates. Yesterday with Reeves or, whoever that guy is that I just ended up playing 30% of and pissing Jesse off there at small forward. It was so fun. But I am looking at Nickeil Alexander-Walker as the main beneficiary of those two pieces of news if they both end up out. I think if you get one of them out, you play the other guy. I still get the weird feeling that Dante DiVincenzo wouldn't start, though, if Mike Conley ends up out. Do you get that same feeling?
Doesn't
Not that it matters.
feel like he would, just given his current status right now.
He's been brutal, man. It's been bad.
I mean, I think Joe Ingles probably gets back in and plays a bit today if that breaks in a certain way. Get his ball handling out there, get him as like a pseudo bigger point guard. I mean, they do go to Josh Minot from time to time.
It would be Rob Dillingham for me. I would blindly play Rob Dillingham at 3K. There's ridiculous upside especially considering the matchup on the other side. I mean, the defensively it got a little bit better for sure. Scotty Barnes not just a little bit better, a lot bit better as opposed to minutes for Boucher, Mogbo, those other guys. I have to look at Minnesota and just kind of like react to that news as it comes. We're going to have a lot of pieces of Detroit, Charlotte. I think Charlotte looks awesome to some extent here with Diabate now and LaMelo Ball. And, I'm still going to get some Trey Mann when it's all said and done. I'm still going to get some of those other pieces, but I think it would be pretty easy to still react to this news and just kind of play however those chips fall.
I'd be surprised if I ended up getting to Dillingham. It's the type of play that you would love to get out in front of for sure. They just haven't gave a single shit about him yet. But it's the type of thing like once they do, maybe if those guys are out, they finally just give him the keys for a game.
Well,
like,
we haven't had a game where both were out.
Is.
Yeah, we haven't had a game with both of them out. And I think that's the important part is like, it's a completely different circumstance and, getting out in front of it, like even 18, 20 minutes of Dillingham, I think, again, 0.70 fantasy points per minute. I don't even care about it. I just look at what he did in Kentucky and playing some college basketball DFS, like towards the end of the tournament and things of that nature. I like to do that just so I get some familiarity with some of these guys. I usually don't play much volume for it, but like, I think Rob Dillingham is a bucket getter. That guy is literally out there to just get buckets. He did it in Summer League. He did it a little bit here from time to time in the preseason. Like really, really good bench piece. But Nickeil Alexander-Walker with the positionality would I think probably be your starter with both out. If DiVincenzo is in, I think it's really hard to pull the trigger on Dillingham.
Agreed. We got the added ownership update as well. We're up to 41% Moussa Diabate.
Fuck.
So, yeah. What do you want to do with the rest of Minnesota here, though? Because like obviously the impact of Conley and DiVincenzo probably doesn't matter much for your Anthony Edwards, your Julius Randles, your Rudy Goberts. What do you like here? It's a really weird setup for this team today.
Yeah, it's a weird setup. I think Rudy Gobert is rightfully getting the most ownership, but I hate that he's overowned here. It's just a true center on the other side. You don't have to go to the Naz Reid piece for like extra minutes here and there. You get a true center who doesn't really have range. I think that's the most important part for Rudy Gobert. Whenever I'm projecting him and, I always do the betting show in the late night. It's always kind of like looking at how many times a guy is going to pull him away from the basket, because that's just kind of been his kryptonite. That's the thing that people focus in on all the time. But we are getting 37, 38 minutes for Jakob Poeltl. Scotty Barnes maybe takes a minute or two off the top there, but with a true center who legitimately has shot 0 threes this entire 0 for 0, I feel pretty good about Rudy Gobert pulling the ownership that he is. He's in 20% of my stuff. I'm just kind of holding hands with the field.
Yep, we're same page. He's in 25% of my stuff, right with the field. I'm basically right with the field with Randall. I'm right with the field with Edwards. I'm right with the field with Conley and Reed. Like right now, I'm just in lockstep with what the field is doing with Minnesota. And that's kind of how I feel right now. Like when I ran my optimals before this started, ignoring Nickeil Alexander-Walker because his was 10%. It doesn't even matter what name I attach this to. 17, 15, 15, 15, 14, 14. Those are all the exact same guy relative to salary. So I'm having trouble separating them. I'm getting like 100% of Minnesota in the aggregate of 800, but it's not any one individual guy. They all just look the same.
Yep. Beautiful.
Yes. Now,
Yes.
the opposite side of this game just looks bad. Scotty Barnes looks like he's going to be back today. 8,700 point guard only should be starting, but on a minutes limit, whatever the hell that means. Only Jakob Poeltl is getting north of 10% ownership on DraftKings, and that's 11. Everybody else is 7 or non-existent. On FanDuel, Poeltl's 17% owned. We are still seeing 20% ownership coming into RJ Barrett, who's $500 cheaper than he is on DK. And then everybody else there is super single digits. Now, I think the FanDuel side of this one for Toronto, I like them as GPP pivots to some higher owned guys. On the DraftKings side, like I kind of do believe that these guys shouldn't be all that owned. They don't look great. So what are your thoughts on Toronto while I walk over to the oven and make sure that the chicken pot pie is not burning?
I will talk very, very slowly, especially for you, Javier Hernandez, because you hate when I don't get to the point right away. But guess what? This is my show. You are watching me talk and break down NBA analysis, and you're going to fucking sit there and you're going to like it. I have 0 shares of anybody from Toronto, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Damn. On that. And let me tell you what, that chicken pot pie looking damn good.
Awesome. That's delicious.
So that's working out pretty well. My crew should be heading back soon to eat that bad boy when I finish this show. I'm with you on Toronto. I have 2 shares of Jakob Poeltl and nobody else. And that
0.
is more than cool with me. If I'm going to have anybody, Poeltl works. Like no matter who's back, he's just the center playing center minutes. So I'll never care that I'm getting to him. And he's obviously been playing really well as of late. It's been nice to see him kind of reclaim himself a little bit. But for the rest of Toronto, I mean, to me, this is pretty easy. If you want to pivot to an RJ Barrett in a GPP or a Grady Dick in a GPP, I get it at no ownership today because it's a 4-gamer. Like Toronto could just win the game and then they become a little interesting at low ownership to try to be a little bit different. But there's not a single priority from Toronto. There's not a guy that you're like starting your lineup with. That's not a thing. But if you have some other mildly owned 6K-ish guard or forward, swap him in for a completely unowned Grady Dick, who's been much better this season than I was ever expecting Grady Dick to be.
Shout out Grady Dick for making some actual adjustments. I mean, he's putting that work in. Dick is putting in that work in, Devin. Don't give up. Offensively, I mean, I will say, like, Dunks and Threes has him regressing. Why wouldn't he, though, at some point in time? Like, this is just kind of absurd what he's done offensively to start off this season, but I didn't see it coming. He's averaging, 20.5 per 75? I mean, 75 possessions. I mean, this is pretty ridiculous stuff across the board from him.
Yeah. But it is pretty clear there's not a lot of good coming from the Toronto Raptors today. So we move on. But first, I want you guys to sign up at Stokastic, and it's very easy to do. I know Jordan's going to drop a link in chat. That link also exists in the description of this video. You could use it to sign up at any one of our partners, sportsbooks or pick'em sites. My recommendation, and you guys can see it on the screen, maybe sign up for DraftKings Pick 6. That's not the worst idea in the world because that's going to end up getting you a month free of whichever sport you're looking for at Stokastic. You get behind the paywall, you get our projections, our ownership, access to the boom bust tool, our entire simulation package, whether that's the single lineup sim or just the full contest generator. All of that stuff is coming with it. You will pay us $0 for that month. And whichever one of these sites that you choose to sign up via, you're going to get something from them too, whether that's bonus bets or a deposit bonus. So it essentially costs you nothing other than whatever deposit you're making at whatever partner you choose. They're giving you something, and we're also giving you a month of access to the Sims. There's not a better deal. If you've ever been on the fence about it, we're making it very simple for you. You can try it for a month and it doesn't have to cost you anything at all. Why not try that? If you're here, I mean, there's 2,500 people here. I would bet a large majority of the people that are watching this show have never signed up at Stokastic before. You can do that right now and it costs you nothing. Wouldn't you want to test out something that you see having an avatar at the top of contests pretty regularly? Wouldn't you want to test that out for no cost? That's what I would want to do. So do that. Sign up. Click the link. Helps us out a ton. The Utah Jazz are 2.5-point dogs in San Antonio, 223 total. Utah is without Jordan Clarkson today. Meanwhile, the San Antonio Spurs are without Victor Wembanyama, Devin Vassell, Jeremy Sohan. Chris Paul is in. Zach Collins is questionable, but on the injury report, at least by all accounts from what we've seen, he is expected to be playing today, but trust nothing, you know. The Utah side and the San Antonio side getting a lot of ownership. That is the number one. Well, it was the number one and number two owned teams. Now Charlotte is at the top because of that news of Bridges, but Charlotte, San Antonio, Utah, they are the teams getting the most ownership. This is the most owned overall game that exists. 40% to Markkanen on DraftKings, 15 to Keontae George on both, 40 to John Collins on both, 50 to Colin Sexton on both, 10 to 20 on Filipowski. It's a lot of love coming into Utah. This is going to be a disgusting game, but I'm going to have an absolute ton of it.
With Walker Kessler and Jordan Clarkson off the floor this season, 28.3% usage for John Collins. Now, you had Lauri Markkanen out for a little bit, so I think it might be inflated a little bit, but I mean, this is an absurd number. I'm way over to John Collins right now. This is kind of the guy that I was planting my flag with as the best amongst these guys. I think Colin Sexton is the best amongst them, but everybody's getting there already, 50% owned. From a tournament perspective, though, Lauri Markkanen pulling quite a bit of ownership. We have his optimal percentage a little north of that. I'm fine with it, but I kind of like one for one, Lauri Markkanen or John Collins in tournaments.
I have a little bit more Markkanen.
Okay.
But I have 35% of Collins and 45% of Markkanen. So the answer to me is like both. But,
yeah, I'm not going to fade Markkanen by any means, but
yeah,
I'm just pointing out that 161 minutes this season without Kessler and Clarkson, and it has been like the John Collins show. And with Zach Collins out there and Sandro Mamukashvili and the backup center there in Bassi, like this is a great spot if you're John Collins to go out and like, I don't know, isn't everybody trying to get out of Utah? Like Lauri Markkanen's getting all the hype for it. And John Collins, he's not a winning basketball player, but I think somebody might take the bait. They might take a bait on Jordan Clarkson or Colin Sexton. This entire team should be up for grabs from the young owner. But I look at John Collins as kind of the guy that's going a little bit slept on. And, when you look at San Antonio from a defensive perspective and you're updating your sheets, the on-off between the defensive rating with Wemby and without Wemby is just ridiculous. It's so dumb. It's kind of like doing Jokic on the offensive end for Denver.
Yeah, it's insane. He just erases people and it changes the entire scope of the team. It's crazy to think about. They are dreadful without him out there on D. Is there a Utah guy getting any sort of love, or is there a Utah guy that like you don't agree with? Because I'm right there with the field on Collins and Sexton. I'm up to 60% Markkanen now. I have some Filipowski. Like I don't have much Keontae George.
I have zero Kyle.
Those other guys have a ton.
Yeah, so I have more on Keontae George and I have less on Filipowski. I have zero Filipowski. I like Kyle Filipowski just because he's a Dookie, but I hate him from a basketball player perspective. You can't really utilize him whatsoever on the defensive end. Zach Collins is probably going to abuse him if they start him, so have fun with that one. Kyle Filipowski, I'm assuming, starts because he has been. Harrison Barnes going up there against him. Maybe you get a little bit of a old man game from my old Ames, Iowa pal, Harrison Barnes, but I look at John Collins as kind of my favorite piece from the entire team. Colin Sexton, he's very popular. He should be, assuming that he's continuing to start there alongside Keontae George. But I think Keontae George maybe a little bit slept on. He's been so bad, but we have less than a 15-game sample size already this season. I'm not going to cut bait on him. 32.7% three-point percentage, true shooting right around 50.3, 46% effective field goal percentage this season. That has to get better. And it's nice when he has the built-in 27.6% assist rate that is number one on this team across the board.
Let's get to the opposite side for San Antonio, who It's basically doing the same thing. These guys have 150% ownership combined, or like to each team. 40 to Castle on both sites, 25 to Champagne on both sites. No love to the Barnacle of the Bay. 30 to 40 on Chris Paul. 15 to 30, depending on your site, for Zach Collins. 15 for Keldon Johnson. 24 for Charles Bassey on DraftKings, 14 on FanDuel. That Diabate news took a big bite out of that Charles Bassey ownership now, because now we have basically two guys at the exact same price point, sort of doing the same thing. Diabate, not the same per minute guy as Bassey. Diabate also probably more likely to play a couple more minutes than Bassey to try to offset that. Where are you going for San Antonio?
Love Castle. Everybody watched UConn play, but like, I don't know if he like popped to me last season. And then he goes top 5, and I see why. He's a winning basketball player. And, a lot of the main sites that I like to look at to kind of evaluate a player or help you evaluate a player, Stephon Castle has like a positive estimated plus minus for a rookie that's just trailing up. They have him finishing at like a plus 0.5 estimated plus minus, like across the board. They've changed kind of the way that they do things over there. I'm still kind of getting a hang of how they go about it between the predictive and the historical. So I won't talk too much to it. His true shooting has not been good so far. Nope. He has not been shooting it, but he fills up the stat categories a little bit more than, just about anybody. And defensively, he can do a lot of things for you at 4,900.
Yeah.
Playing big minutes. Defensively, you can definitely see why they went out and got this guy. He is a monster on that side of the floor. I know it's not showing up in the block rate yet, but just wait. I think it's going to start trailing up here to some extent. He's so good, can guard so many positions. I see why they're playing him 34, 35 minutes a game here in competitive spots, and that's what this projects out to be. So he's the guy that I'm playing the absolute most of. So is the field. We have him a little bit over-owned. I kind of don't care. Chris Paul, 6,300. I'm under the field on. I'm not going to get to that number. And I currently have 0 Charles Bassey. I get it. There are ways that at 4K he can put up a score for you, but with Diabate now existing, I went from having around 15% and was way under the field already. There's no reason that they can't just extend some minutes for Zach Collins here, that they can't go to Sandro Mamukashvili a little bit more. He played 17 minutes against Dallas. That game got a little bit out of hand, I suppose, but Keldon Johnson's there. Devin Vassell continues to be out, but that's definitely kind of bolstered. Not going to look as good for the ancillary pieces with Trey Jones, having played 3 consecutive games now and being back in this lineup. So I'm not really all that in love with it. I guess Champagne's the one guy, Julian Champagnie. I don't know what to do with him right now. I have him in 20% of stuff. Help me out.
I'm not going to be able to help you out there. It's sort of the same situation for me right now. Like, I'm right with the field on Castle. I have 35. I'm right with the field on Champagnie. I have 30. But then I don't have Chris Paul, essentially. He's 30% owned. I have 5%. That's one of my biggest fades of the day. I am getting to a little bit more Keldon Johnson than the field is. I'm neutral on Collins. I'm now very light on Charles Bassey, only about a third of the field right now. He was last projected at 25%. So I am still getting to a bunch of San Antonio, but I'm a little bit lighter than I was expecting. And a lot of that lightness is coming via Chris Paul. But for Champagnie, he just is like, he's a guy that works today, going to be in around 30 minutes, great positional spot, 4,600. So the salary doesn't matter. He just fits for a 4-gamer.
So my thinking is right now I have 20%. It's almost like just sitting there. We'll see what happens with Minnesota. I would be just fine playing 0% if you get one of Conley or DiVincenzo out and just kind of leaning all the way into that news. I might even just like remove him to some extent. A little bit different with the Sims tool going through that process, but I will ROI decrease him to the ground in the event that we get some kind of value out of Minnesota.
Let's finish this one up. Final game. Also, 9.5 minutes left to go before we get to locks. So start getting your shit ready. Orlando Magic, Q-Tag Wendell Carter Jr. That's official, right? It is official. No KCP, though, today, out for personal reasons. I kind of sniffed that out to a little bit of a degree this morning on the strategy show when I had these lines. I had Orlando, I had the gap between the Vegas line and my line by like 4 points or something. So I tested it on Franz, and it would have hit the number on the nose. And I was like, nah, that one feels a little aggressive. I was like, I think we're either going to get Franz. I assumed Franz was going to get like a Q tag. I was like, I think we're either getting Franz or KCP as like something's up. And then it came out in that injury report. So I sniffed that one out a little bit on the strategy show this morning,
awesome.
although I was slightly leaning more to Franz. He's 25% on both sites. Suggs is 10 on DraftKings, 25 on FanDuel. And then Anthony Black seems to be the biggest beneficiary of KCP being out. He's projected for about 18% ownership. And then the rest of the team is essentially unowned at this moment. A small trickle to Cole Anthony at the flat 3K. I'm nervous about that one. I don't have him. But I have some Suggs. I have some Wagner. I have some Black. I'm right at the field, though. I don't have a big stand on Orlando. I just don't like this game very much.
I know this is going to sound like not something that's related to what I'm doing, but I was curious if you knew what Cole Anthony's contract was.
They re-upped him on the extension before last year for like,
Yes,
what,
they did.
14 or something like that, somewhere in the neighborhood.
13 million a year. Yeah, you got it 100%. Because I was watching the Clippers game last night out here on the West Coast. Cole Anthony just sat there on the bench idle by and came in the last 3 minutes, and I'm like, shit, kind of forgot about Cole Anthony's existence. Because Anthony Black, they have draft capital in him. He's playing big minutes, 33, 29 the last two. He's been coming off the bench and just routinely playing big minutes. And you take a guy like KCP off the floor, you're going to hurt the defense of the game, that's for sure. And a revenge in his heart spot for the team you won a title with. But without him out there, Gary Harris is kind of the guy that I'm curious what ends up happening with. He's unowned.
Yeah.
Nobody has him. 3,100. I don't think anybody's projecting for minutes. I think he starts shooting guard, small forward. I don't think I'm going to play him. I think we have too much other stuff that's popped up here with 8 minutes before lock in this Charlotte spot, with Minnesota pending, with San Antonio and Utah in a game environment that's up there in the highest total on the slate. I think this is mostly just Franz Wagner and pass on everything else. Like Anthony Black, 4,400 is fine. You get a terrible backcourt. You probably get more minutes that you get to face D'Angelo Russell. That's always going to be a good thing. But as I run through this, I mean, I was thinking just a little bit differently. I think Gary Harris ends up getting the start, and he just kind of does what KCP does in that starting rotation. And then it gets a little bit murky, but Jonathan Isaac, I am very worried about his minutes on a back-to-back. I'm surprised that he's actually playing tonight at 4,300 just with the injury history. He's been playing on some of these back-to-backs, but like, you can't possibly look at last game and see some of the minutes that we've had for him in some of these spots. He played, 22 yesterday. His last back-to-back, he went and played 14, 22. They were really light on his minutes on the front end of that. And so I think the biggest change for me is I just have Jonathan Isaac playing like 16 minutes today. And it's giving me an opportunity to get to Tristan da Silva a little bit. It's giving me an opportunity to get to Gary Harris if I really want it, but I doubt I do anything besides Franz Wagner. I have one share of Anthony Black right now.
I have 25% of Black. I'm assuming that Black is the replacement starter for KCP right now. And I'd rather it be Black in my mind, because if it happens to end up being Gary Harris, then I at least have that mostly the same sort of, like, they both have shooting guard eligibility. As long as Anthony Black will probably not be showing up in the point guard spot for me all that frequently since it's the last game. So I think that I'd be able to get to Gary Harris if he started to look a little bit better for a swap. I'd hate for it to be the other way around and then be sort of boxed out for it. But I like the Tristan da Silva shout. He's in 15% of my lineups right now.
Yeah, I thought about potentially giving him a little bit of a boost to get to a little bit more. Again, I've trimmed the minutes, but I have Gary Harris starting, and as such, just the way that it trickled down, I have like nothing else. He's the least appealing guy that you could possibly have start, but he has the positionality. He's 3,100, but now we have other value that I just like more.
Speaking of value that you like more, wait, no, that's not on my screen. That is just in chat from somebody random. So if that news isn't legitimately real, Jordan, go ahead and rip that dude out for the Conley news.
Send him to the shadow realm anyway.
Or it's real, but it hasn't popped up on Underdog yet.
Let me see. I can ask I have a source. He's very, 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 very good with this shit. I haven't used it.
Well, I mean, we're going to get, I assume if somebody's seeing it somewhere, we're going to get it officially, but it did not get reported by Underdog just yet. Let's close this out quickly, though, talking about a team that I essentially don't have, which is the Los Angeles Lakers. 20% ownership to LeBron on both sites. 10 to Reeves on FanDuel, around 10 for AD on both sites. essentially no other ownership coming into the Lakers. I don't have any LeBron right now, which certainly does make me a little nervous. I have 10% of AD and absolutely nothing else. Rui Hachimura is still questionable for this one, so could look a little bit different. And potentially, you get to a little bit more through the swaps, but I am not super fond of getting to the Lakers today.
1 second.
Josh Lloyd tweeted it.
Yeah, Mike Conley is listed inactive. Josh Lloyd tweeted it. Yeah.
We'll see.
That would really suck if he wasn't. I asked a buddy, and we'll see. But
yeah.
What did I have to add here? Not a whole lot. I think you know what you want to do with the Lakers. There's spend up options that, as you get at value, look better. I think the amount of LeBron and Anthony Davis I get to, it's probably going to be dependent on what happens with Minnesota to some extent. There's nothing that's all that fascinating right now, but some of that Utah 5K, 6K pieces could turn into 4K pieces, and then I will get to more LeBron. I'm currently around the field on him. I usually get north on Anthony Davis, but I always see like some artificial ownership coming in on him. He's 11-1 now. That's going to require some more value for me. I have him in 2 lineups right now, so I basically have nothing here besides a lot of LeBron.
Okay. Interesting.
You have anything else? Yeah. I didn't hear what you said there. I was
no. It was just AD. There's just not much else going on for me in this spot.
Okay. No LeBron?
Nope.
I have 100% Musa Diabate, so I don't know what you did earlier. But
I now have 70.
Okay, there we go. Just making sure that we were on the same page. How much Trey Mann did you get to?
5.
Holy shit. Okay, we are very different there. I have 66% in my top 150.
That is quite a bit.
It's a lot of Trey Mann.
That feels like a lot of Trey Mann.
I have a lot of Brandon Miller, too. What the hell just happened? I am so fucked.
That seems like a lot. Look, I mean, I like Brandon Miller, so I don't think that's the craziest play in the world. We're about there at lock now, guys. You have 2 minutes to get your lineups in, and based on the way that I'm seeing everybody talk, if you're playing on FanDuel, that has not been a fun experience for you. Can't relate to it tonight, so sorry, guys, but nothing I can do about that one. But it sounds like you guys aren't super happy about it. Seems like a bummer.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I'm so sad.
Oh no,
so sad.
I like what you said. I would
be freaking out right now if I didn't play FanDuel, though. I would be so irritated.
I like what you talked about. Did you get any Keldon Johnson? That's the last guy who's popping up to me now, who I didn't have before.
I'm gonna know the answer to that question in a second.
Okay.
I'm just pasting these lineups in and moving forward here.
Yep, that's kind of what I'm planning on doing too.
Final minute. They are now. Oops. They are now saved, and they are now uploaded, so I can find out what I actually got, which could look very different than everything else we've talked about. But I officially now have 20% Trey Mann. So coming back into your realm. What was who did you ask about before that?
I asked about Keldon Johnson.
Oh, yeah. Keldon Johnson is in 25% of my lineups.
Okay, that's more than me, but I got to him, period, now, whereas I wasn't getting him before. I think that's just, I ended up with a lot more Charlotte than I was thinking I would.
Yeah, I have a boatload.
Yep, I'm with you.
A lot of LaMelo, some Brandon Miller, Grant, Musa, Cody, Trey Mann. It's just a little bit of all these dudes.
Yep. Good luck, me.
You ready to go watch some basketball?
Yes, let's get out of here. Oh, you mean football, right?
I don't, but there is a football show coming up next. 7:15 start. Laffy and Greg talking Thursday night football. Who the hell plays today?
Cleveland and Pittsburgh. Going to be a lovely, lovely festivity with that 36.5 total.
There you go, everybody. NFL show coming up in 15 minutes. Make sure you're watching it. Make sure you hit the like button on your way out the door. Good luck for this 4-gamer. We'll talk to you tomorrow.